I'm going to read a few different short folk tales, and might be interesting to see the similarities and differences. They are all tied together by the subject of death, as well as by the fact that they come from New Mexico, hence the old map we are looking at. This one is called The Hungry Stranger. A poor man went into the woods to cut wood to take to town to sell. He took with him a very little lunch. About noontime, when he was ready to eat, a stranger appeared before him. He told him that he had traveled for a long time and that he was very hungry. The stranger asked for a share of his lunch. "No," said the woodcutter, "I can't share my lunch. I barely have enough for myself to satisfy my hunger." "Ah," said the stranger, "if you but knew who it is who asks a share of your lunch, you would give him not a share but all." "Who are you?" the woodcutter asked. "I am Jesus Christ," answered the stranger. "Ah, then," replied the woodcutter, "though you be Jesus Christ, I will not give you my lunch. All power is given to you. Why is it I have to work like a slave? I am sure all the world would not suffer so. No one would be ruled by injustice if you were truly merciful and loving." The stranger did not answer, but turned around and left. The next day the woodcutter went into the woods to cut some wood as usual. At noon, a second stranger approached and asked for a share of his lunch. "Yesterday I wouldn't share my food with Jesus Christ. Now you think I will share it with you? Who are you?" asked the woodcutter. "I am Death," replied the stranger. "Ah," cried the poor woodcutter, "take not half but all my food. You treat everybody alike, rich and poor." The end. Oh, here's a short untitled story. There was this old man who was very poor. One day he got his bundle and started off. He didn't know where he was going. As he came to a bridge, he sat down for a rest and to take a drink of water. He looked back and there was a very good-looking man. This good-looking man was God. This boy who was God asked him to share what he had in his bundle with him, but the old man refused. God asked him why he had refused, and the old man said that he refused to share his things with him because God had been very unjust and had not made everyone equal. God then walked away. Then this ugly man came by and asked the poor man to share what he had in his bundle with him. The old man asked this ugly old man to tell him who he was first, and then he could decide if he would share goods or not. This ugly old man was Death. The poor man said that he was willing to share his goods with him because he was the only person that was honest. He meant to say that Death took everyone, not only the poor, but also the rich. The end. Here's one called The Butcher Who Defied Death. In the old country, there lived a butcher who always said that people gave in too easily to death. He said that when death called and motioned to a person, that a person would follow death. One day when it was his time, Death stood at the window of his store and called him. He refused to go, and picked up his meat slasher and began to chase Death. He chased him till they were out of town a ways. Then Death stopped and the butcher took a swing at him and missed, falling into a grave, to be buried alive. The end. Those were our three stories. I'm going to add a little something extra here. Here's some information about the Carreta de la Muerte, the cart of the dead, or the death cart, from New Mexico. New Mexico and southern Colorado. So in New Mexico, you might know they have this wonderful tradition of carving santos, saints. And so you have this pantheon, and that pantheon, of course, includes death. In which case it's a Santa Muerte, so Saint Death, if you will. And even if you do know a little bit about that overall tradition, you might not know about the Carreta de la Muerte. So let me read a little bit from an old publication, show you a picture of it here, and then some great examples of the death carts. And so here we go. The Carreta de la Muerte is a small cart built in the style of the old ox cart, in which rides an allegorical figure of death, such as a skeleton. Made in New Mexico and southern Colorado during the last part of the 19th century and the first part of the 20th, it was a constant feature of the Penitente Morada, and, loaded with rocks and pulled by one of the Brotherhood, an instrument of penance. The most apparent and significant fact is that from the time that Nazario Lopez of Cordova made the first New Mexican Carreta de la Muerte in about 1860, the death cart spread very rapidly, considering the slow communications of the time, throughout northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. It was accepted in every morada except those that retained possession of an actual skull. In doing so, the death cart joined an established system of artistic representations, the santos, and took its place alongside a set of subjects that formed a functionally complete system of motivational relatives. There was a santo and a saint for each of the significant hopes and fears within the New Mexican Spanish universe. Fray, which is Friar by the way, Fray Angelico Chavez in My Penitente Land speaks of the death cards as proclaiming so much Christ's death as the certain uneasy fate of every man. And maybe just a little bit more here. The Christian New Mexican embraces death because he loves life, because death is a part of life, and until death has been accepted, life is but a subterfuge. The Spanish philosophy of life faces the realism of existence and accents the inevitable end of living. The Spanish New Mexican demonstrates this realistic individualism that accepts existence without cynicism and meditates upon death. And so, in this total context, the folklore surrounding the death cart can best be appreciated. That touching the cart conferred good luck and especially longer life. Well, I hope everybody found that interesting. I certainly did, but most especially Doug Sebastian, because this video was made in thanks to him. And thank you very, very much for supporting Death and Global Folktales. I think it's the best thing I've ever done, so I'm dying to get it out there. No pun intended, or maybe intended. And back to our stories, I found all three of them in the same publication, one from the early 20th century. So these are old New Mexico folktales, and I found the blasphemous common thread interesting. The part about appreciating how death treats everybody equally, that is a common trope. We can see that in Europe. But I had not yet encountered stories where that template includes the chutzpah in dealing with God. Two of the stories are obviously of that exact same type or subtype, and then the butcher story I thought still fit in. One, I wanted to mix it up a little bit, and two, him being willing to take on death is kind of blasphemous in a way as well. And then, of course, the inversion there is that the disrespect is being shown to death as opposed to in the first two stories. So there you go. That's our video. Thanks for watching.